Hello everyone, welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for everyone who's been waiting for me, and thank you for everyone joining us. If you're joining us for the first time, this live stream is for you, for the viewers, the subscribers, the members to participate, share their views, share their thoughts, and for me to address other topics apart from the main videos that I publish for you guys. I hope you're doing well on this Saturday morning or afternoon or evening, depending where you are. John Doe, thank you so much. I already have a super thanks. By Allah's will, from the river to the sea, Palestinians and Palestine will be free. Thank you, Brother Mahmoud, for your valuable works for us. And thank you, brother, for your kind and generous support, and each and every one of you for your dedication, for your work, for your viewing, for your support, for your personal work that you do. I know some of you are active in your own personal life, and that's very, very important. Welcome to everyone joining us, obviously. And tonight, I wanted to speak to you about the remaining people who Israel assassinated. Can you hear me better now, by the way? Let's bring the mic closer like that. Here we go. Is this better now? Okay, tell me if the sound is better now. Let's hope it's... Yeah, there we go. Okay, thank you so much for letting me know, by the way. I kept the mic far off and increased the level so that I don't always have the mic in the video, but clearly I pushed it on my way out and I had to push it a little bit back. But anyway, now it's better and that's good. Okay, so if you haven't watched my previous video, by the way, I spoke about a couple of important developments. You can head out and watch it. Later on, the IRGC chief sending warnings to Israel, telling them that they're going to collapse. Preparations from the US, preparations from Israel, panic, as a matter of fact, from Israel. They're preparing food, they're withdrawing cash from the banks, all sorts. Tonight, and by the way, I have another video coming for you later on tonight. But what I wanted to talk about is the other identities of the people that Israel killed during their targeting of the World Kitchen Aid Convoy. And things are changing. Things are changing here in Britain. Things are changing in the US. And it's not in Israel's favor. So I'm going to start off with, obviously, the names of the people that Israel killed and the fact that they are former Royal Navy, and one of them is armed forces as well. So we've had a couple of reports, obviously, in the media, not to the level that's required, really. But about these 3 British people who were killed in this targeted assassination, really. Now, before I continue, I need to tell you something. Israel, they knew who these people are. Israel had all of the details of everyone in that convoy. The authorities were aware of everyone who was there, and they still carried out these attacks. Everyone should know that. So they know who they were, their backgrounds, where they're coming from, and all of these things. Not like Israel did not know. Israel knew very well what it was doing. So one of them is a former Royal Marine two of them, former Royal Marines actually. His name is, what's his name? Chapman one, John Chapman. James Kirby as well. And another one is called James Henderson. James Henderson, former Royal Marine, 33, from Cornwall. He was part of the relief team security, and he was there. John Chapman, 57. James Kirby, 48. Right? All of them British Armed Forces. One of them was not in the Royal Navy. Apparently, Kirby, he was a military veteran, and according to one report, he was a sniper marksman, army rifleman and sniper marksman. James's brother, James Henderson's brother, he did not wish to be named, but he had a statement. He said, "Accountability is the only hope of justice I have. I don't believe our government will hold the correct people to account, but I guarantee that our government will sell weapons to Israel, which may in turn be used to kill our fellow citizens. It's hard to comprehend that." He also added, "It's inexcusable behavior to kill my brother and his colleagues on a humanitarian mission. Our thoughts are with the suffering people who have been deprived of basic humanitarian needs. It's unacceptable for our world leaders to ignore this gross miscarriage of justice." Then we had multiple statements from conservative MPs. One of them is David Jones. He said that the Israeli strike, funny enough, Tories, okay, conservatives, well, they had this legal team, 600 legal experts telling them, what Israel's doing is a crime against humanity and you can't continue to support them. But he said that our government should urgently reassess its supply of arms and deliver a stern warning to Israel about its conduct. He also added, Israel has every right to defend itself and every right to act proportionally. We all have our comments about that. That doesn't include people who are trying to do good. He said, given that we've seen 3 British citizens, all of them ex-forces, killed in what is at best a negligent manner, he's being very generous, this man. Why are they so generous? I think that we really need to reassess our supply of weaponry there. I thought that Netanyahu's response saying these things happen in war was completely inadequate, frankly, and shamefully inadequate. Another Tory, Paul Bristow, he said the thought that British-made arms could be used in action that kills innocent civilians in Gaza turns the stomach. The fact that we have now seen British aid workers killed while they try to feed families in Gaza must be a line in the sand. Flick Drummond, another Tory, he said that UK arms sales to Israel should be stopped for the foreseeable future. This has been concerning for me for some time, she said. What worries me is the prospect of UK arms being used in Israel's actions in Gaza, which I believe have broken international law. Again, another one, Hugo Swire, he's a former foreign office minister in Cameron's government. He said, I fully support the UK policy of selling arms to Israel in order for Israel to be able to defend itself from any would-be aggressor. Again, you know, these terms, these people are like very generous with their terms. What's up with that? What I do not support is the selling of arms which can be and now look as if they are being used offensively in Gaza. Alan Duncan, another former foreign office minister, he told Charity Action for Humanity that, quote, the government's stance on arms exports to Israel is a matter of grave concern, particularly given Israel's blatant disregard for international humanitarian law. He called for an immediate arms embargo and immediate clarifications of whether UK components were used in the strike that killed the aid workers. These are the statements. Now, here's my comment on this. Here's what I would like to mention. Number one, they're being so generous. Why are you being so generous? Your people are being killed, ex-armed forces. Why are you so generous in your tone with Israel? And again, where's the condemnation? Hello? Condemnation? We're deafened by all of the condemnations left, right, and center about what Hamas supposedly did. Turned out to be Israel, massacring its own civilians, killing its own prisoners in Gaza, over 80 by now. Where's the condemnation for Israel? Can't you condemn the action? And another thing I wanted to highlight, similarly to what I highlighted in the case of Aaron Bushnell and the recent guy that I spoke about yesterday, the US-Canadian veteran, is the fact that these people who served in the army, British Army, Canadian Army, US Army, went for battle, whether they were misled, ill-informed in their service. They probably had good intentions and they were missold something. They went, they had these eye-opening experiences. But by doing what they do now in supporting Gaza, clearly shows that these people have good intentions. It doesn't look like they have bad intentions, right? You're doing something very generous. You're leaving your daily comfortable life, leaving your families, going to a place where you can be killed. And you did eventually get killed on the first day. It shows how these people were misled about the wars that their country supposedly sent them to. Not supposedly, actually sent them to. Afghanistan and Iraq, criminal wars, where a larger genocide happened, by the way, than what's happening in Gaza. And not to undermine what's happening in Gaza, it's one of the worst genocides in history, especially the size and comparison, all of these things. But what the British Army did in Iraq and Afghanistan, what the US Army did over there, that's no less genocidal. And bear in mind, we had less social media, less access to the truth. However, these people, many of them genuinely have an interest to help and serve. And that's why they sacrifice. And that's why they're sacrificing now. Yet, these countries that supposedly boast on about, patriotism and people who serve in the army and this and that, it doesn't seem like they are taking the necessary actions against this country, against this genocidal state, which raises questions about their own intentions. I mean, many of us already know their intentions and what they do and what they do not do. But again, the tone that you're speaking in, what kind of tone is this? Like reassess, we support their right to defend themselves and, we're not sure, but, maybe we can consider banning arms. It's a very generous tone, to say the least. Also, another thing that I want to talk to you about is there was a YouGov poll, YouGov Action for Humanity poll, particularly in England, in the UK, about exporting arms to Israel. So 56% of the British public said stop importing. 17% said keep exporting. So 56% stop exporting, 17% keep exporting, 26% don't know. The vast majority, 56%, stop exporting arms to Israel. Then, is Israel violating human rights? 59%, Israel is violating human rights. 12%, they're not violating human rights. 28%, I don't know. Large chunk of the people don't know, by the way, but the vast majority stop. And they are violating. Clearly, the majority of the people know what's happening. The question is, will they take action? They're killing your own people. And by the way, I'm mentioning these people not as, no, don't get me wrong here. Their blood is not worth more than the Palestinian blood. Don't get me wrong. It's just to highlight how these countries behave when their own people are killed, which confirms that these governments and countries are careless about their own people. And it highlights another very dangerous thing that I spoke about earlier on during this genocide, is that if you justify an action, if you justify an act, in this case, genocide, violations of human rights, criminality, and the list goes on, of what Israel is committing in Gaza, you're justifying the act. Be careful. If you justify it against other people, you're justifying it against yourself. So be very careful with what you justify. We said this from the beginning. Clearly now, it's biting them. It's hitting their own population. Now, in my view, all of us are a global human family. The difference is in people, obviously. You have people who have morals, who follow their morals, and who are morally consistent. And you have people who are immoral, are selfish, and only concerned about their own interests, and who are also weak and cowards. Because you need some sort of bravery to confront something that your government doesn't support, for example, or if your government is going to label you for it. You need some people with guts, okay? And most people are gutless and spineless. That's the truth. However, the danger with that is the justification of these actions and the silence, your silence facing these atrocities, bites you back hard, very hard, and you pay for it, and you can pay for it. So if you're silent against your government supporting a genocide, you're next, as and when the time comes. You're next, as and when the time comes. And you can't act like you don't know. Why? Because if you act like you don't know, they'll start acting with impunity. Power corrupts. They need to be held to account. They need to be told that what they're doing is a crime. Silence and supporting criminality is participating in it. The baffling thing is, on an individual basis, if you have someone, you're friends with someone who goes and murders someone, and you're silent against this murder, in the court of justice, you're complicit. Why? Because you knew he was committing something, you didn't inform the authorities, you didn't prevent murder. Is it acceptable on a larger scale? If it's not acceptable on an individual basis for average human beings, right, who can commit crimes, why is it acceptable on a state scale and on a government scale? Shows the level of hypocrisy and double standards here, and how power corrupts. What I wanted to continue with before I open the space up for all of you kind people to participate and share your thoughts and ask questions that you can start sharing from now, by the way, and I will get to you in a sec, is Biden's conversation with Netanyahu. So Israel started behaving a little bit differently, still genocidal, but they opened up the Erez checkpoint. The Erez checkpoint is the most northern crossing between Gaza and Israel, North Gaza and Israel. Israel did not open it since the 7th of October with the excuse of it being destroyed by Hamas on the 7th of October. Imagine what a stupid excuse. You just open the gates. All of a sudden, it started working. What happened? Many people said this conversation between Biden and Netanyahu, Biden was dictating. It was a dictation. It was not a conversation. You read between the lines, you hear what they said, they're being diplomatic, and you see Israel's actions. So Biden had a call with Netanyahu. He clearly threatened him, clearly asked him for immediate action. And they stayed within hours or days, asking him to allow Palestinians to North Gaza, aid to the north. And if they won't follow the orders, changes will happen in their relationship. Changes will happen in their relationship. Immediately after that call, we heard about aid trucks going into the north. All of a sudden, Israel opening the Erez checkpoint. And today, there was a meeting between the IDF and aid groups. Aid groups in Gaza to coordinate aid from Israel to North Gaza. That's a quick change. The official statement that came from the White House briefing room, they said President Biden spoke by telephone with the Prime Minister Netanyahu. The two leaders discussed the situation in Gaza. President Biden emphasized that the strikes on humanitarian workers and the overall humanitarian situation are unacceptable. He made clear the need for Israel to announce and implement a series of specific, concrete, and measurable steps to address civilian harm, humanitarian suffering, and the safety of aid workers. He made clear that the U.S. policy with respect to Gaza will be determined by our assessment of Israel's immediate action on these steps. He underscored that an immediate ceasefire is essential to stabilize and improve the humanitarian situation and protect innocent civilians, and he urged the Prime Minister to empower his negotiators to conclude a deal without delay to bring the hostages home. The two leaders also discussed public Iranian threats against Israel and the Israeli people. President Biden made clear that the United States strongly supports Israel in the face of those threats. That was the official statement, right? From the White House. John Kirby, he was stuttering. He said 21 times in his statement to clarify what Biden actually told Benjamin Netanyahu. This man knows, but he's an actor. All of these people are actors. They're like clowns in a circus. But clearly something's happening. And Israel's taking action. Again, not enough. People are still being killed. There's still a genocide going on. But there are changes, like the aid to the north. That's something they haven't budged in since the temporary ceasefire about. A core condition of Hamas, aid to the north and allowing people to the north. All of a sudden, you're allowing it without a ceasefire? A free gesture of goodwill to Hamas and the Palestinian people? Of course not. But this just highlights how powerful the U.S. position is. And why, since the beginning of this genocide, it has been worse than Israel as an enabler. What, did they not know that Israel is going to massacre people? Did they not know? Did they not see the bombings since the beginning? Of course they did. But now they're taking some sort of action. And these were the first steps from Benjamin Netanyahu. Now they said they're going to send a delegation. Again, they initially announced that they will, paused it for a bit, and then now they're saying we were sending a delegation. The Mossad is going, people are going. We'll see how that proceeds from there, and if they actually reach some sort of a solution. In the meantime, they're getting a massive beating from the Palestinian resistance and some strategic blows that I will be telling you about in my upcoming video later after this live stream, or maybe it could be released during this live stream as well. Enough about me talking now. Well, not enough about me talking. I'm going to continue talking, but this is what I had to say primarily. And now I'll open up the space for you. If you have any questions, read some of your comments as much as possible and as relevant as possible to the topic. Firstly, thank you so much for everyone joining and participating and joining us now as well. Welcome to the live stream. And thank you to Sardar Maronsi for your super, and Daniela Modus Cutter, and obviously John Doe for your generosity and contribution. Your contribution supports my work massively. I'd just like you to know that. And really thank you for it and for your continued support. Obviously, welcome to everyone joining us, and greeting from everywhere. Let's try and see if you have any questions here that I can address, or some interesting comments. Okay. Tom McTeague. Has BRICS released anything yet with official seals or printed on special paper or something condemning Israel and imposing sanctions on anyone doing business with them yet? Not to my knowledge, they haven't. And I believe that the BRICS should be taking a more active role. Now, mind you, the BRICS consists of countries that don't all share the same political views. It's primarily an economic forum. However, it expands to other things too. So it's not like a NATO or a massive, but there is strategy behind it, inevitably. However, some of the participants of the BRICS are obviously very vocal. So if you take, for example, Russia and China and Brazil, are some of the first countries that proposed a ceasefire, an immediate ceasefire. The countries that they were warning us from. Russia, China, and obviously Brazil. Then South Africa had this international court case, but they haven't really said something as a group, as a joint group. I personally think they should. If that will come, we will obviously see. What is definitely happening is more and more of the countries who are outside the scope of influence or intimidation of the US are being more vocal and are taking more and more action. And they have their own organized strategic partnerships between them to face the potential of an all-out war breaking. For example, Turkey and Egypt. Egypt is obviously a member of the BRICS. Now they joined in January. They formed a Strategic Cooperation Council. China, Russia, Iran drills next to the Indian Ocean, alongside Yemen. Now, when you say Russia and China with Iran, Iran is the main supporter of this resistance, aren't they? And the Chinese and Russians, they know that. And these things are very important. They know where the wind is sailing, really. But in terms of the BRICS, we will obviously see if they will have something to say. Okay, let's go to your next question. FP, be careful of what you wish for, who you support. When they are committing crimes, silence is complicity. Absolutely, 100%. Nida Al-Amini, I want to know who pays the weapons and the war, EU and Israel. Well, the US is the biggest contributor, to be fair. I mean, when we talk about banning weapons exports from the UK, for example, the official statistics of UK exports to Israel are around 700 to 800 million since 2008. 700-800 million. That's a big amount of money, but during the course of 16 years. The US, only through its yearly aid, sends Israel $3 billion a year, apart from other things that Israel purchases outside of this aid package. And again, you need to know, by the way, for those of you who don't, I'm sure some of you do, how aid works. So aid works by, if you're in the US, your government taking your money, saying to that country, I'm going to give you that money as foreign aid. The money doesn't go to the country. Why? Because it's conditional. They'll tell them, I will support you with this aid so long as you buy the weapons from us. So what happens? The country takes your money, takes the taxpayers' money, people struggling, people barely making ends meet, taking your money, apart from the trillions of budget of the US military, by the way. We're just talking about the aid for Israel here. They take your money, they keep it in the US. It's not like they send it in cash to Israel. Israel tells them, we want to buy X amounts of jets, X amounts of missiles, X amounts of rockets, ammunition, everything. Tanks, what have you. That money goes to the military-industrial complex and the companies that manufacture these weapons. This is how it works. So the money doesn't leave the US. It just goes from the poor people's pockets to the rich people's pockets. And it's obviously sent to a genocidal state, killing innocent people. So the EU has some sort of support. The main contributions is from the US, and obviously Israel funds itself. They have a yearly budget as well. Their security budget, it's called. Karen Smetanovska, is any country sanctioning Israel? Well, there's more and more countries now banning arms sales to Israel. It started, the trend started primarily following the ICJ ruling against Israel. You had Japan and the Netherlands halting their arms exports to Israel. Netherlands particularly, they were selling very necessary parts for the F-35. Then more and more countries started to ban arms sales to Israel. The most significant one saying, I'm banning arms to Israel altogether, was Canada recently. But now there's growing talks, obviously. In the UK, a traditional
ally of Israel, the country that made it happen, really, the British Empire, Balfour Declaration, giving something they don't own to people who don't deserve it at the expense of the indigenous people. Balfour Declaration, 1917. And they traditionally, was the hub of Zionism. Before the US, it was Britain. Britain handed them Palestine. Although if you go and ask, by the way, military veterans who served, many of them will be very, very old now. But even if you listen to their children and grandchildren, they will tell you exactly what they think about these Zionist terrorist thugs. Because they dealt with the Haganah, with the Irgun, with all of the terrorist Zionist militias in the British Mandate Palestine. And they targeted them many times, like when Israel blew up King David Hotel, for example, disguised as Arabs delivering milk. And they exploded the whole building. It was the headquarters for the British Mandate, killing over 90 people, many of them soldiers, many of them innocent people from various nationalities, most of them British. They know exactly what's happening, but the government's selling them. This is what people need to understand here. Governments sell their own people. That's the truth. So it's a trend and it's growing. Thank you to our moderators very much as well. Zach, will the Security Council pick up the arms sales resolution that passed in the Human Rights Conference? You see, this is the million-dollar question here. Will these resolutions, will these most important court cases, orders, be implemented or be enforced? Will they? There have been plenty of resolutions from the UN since 1948 up until now to call for Israel to allow the Palestinian refugees back. Israel ignored it. To form a Palestinian state. Israel ignored it. To stop the settlements. Israel ignored it. Hell, they supported the Intifada, the uprising of 1987, hailing it, saying it's brave and heroic, supporting the resistance, saying resisting an occupier is legit, even by force. Nothing is implemented. Now that the topics is on the headlines, or at least in some, news networks, mainstream media sometimes acts as if nothing's happening. But will they enforce it? If they don't enforce it, what's the message that you're sending? We live in the law of the jungle. Or even worse, the law of the jungle is more merciful than the world that we live in. It's worse than the wild, wild west, right? So something needs to happen. And in my opinion, there is more responsibility on the countries that oppose this US hegemony. So when you talk about Russia, when you talk about China, emerging powers or superpowers. We talk about China now. They have you heard this recent report, by the way? China has approximately 1.3 million drones and UAVs. It's about to become the biggest country with the biggest air force in the world, surpassing the US. They have obligations because, you have no excuse. You've seen what the US government's been up to all across the world for the past 80 years. And you have an obligation. However, the tone is changing in the US as well, bit by bit. And Israel's making it happen. I mean, Israel's on the path of self-destruction, absolute self-destruction, by what they're doing. So I hope that elaborates. Clyde Pratt, I don't know why Syria and Lebanon haven't got air defense systems in place to take out the IDF jets when they do their airstrike. Very interesting. They do have air defense system, not the most sophisticated. The Syrian ones in particular, they do sometimes target Israeli jets. The market, however, when it comes to air defense systems, it's a very serious thing. You're talking about strategic weapons, game-changing weapons, and you don't get your hands on them very easily. Although the countries that would sell them, for example, to such countries like Syria and Lebanon, they're not in a happy-clappy relationship with Israel or the US. But to them, they have different calculations. What are the calculations? So let's say, for argument's sake, Syria wants S-500 or S-400, right? There are a few S-300 batteries that are operated by Russia in Syria, but they're not obviously always activated against Israel. But let's say they sell them to Syria and Lebanon. Okay, the message here in the bigger picture is, all right, that's justifying, and not to say that, you know, they need an excuse or whatever, but from their understanding, okay, then the US is going to put Patriot missiles closer to Russia, for example. If Russia is going to object that, the US is going to tell them, well, you put in air defense systems in Syria, or increasingly sophisticated air defense systems in Syria and Lebanon, who are hostile to our little genocidal baby state, Israel. So there are many things to take into consideration when you talk about the air defense systems. Again, that's not to justify that position or say that it's right or what have you, but that's the tough reality. Like if the Palestinians had air defense systems, Israel would have been done, because Israel can't do nothing. Look at them. Air, land, forces, everything in the whole world supported by the biggest superpower. They can't defeat Hamas. They can't defeat Hamas. It's not that they can't defeat Hamas. They're being whooped. They're being beaten. They're being humiliated militarily by Hamas and the Palestinian resistance on the ground. Right? So imagine they had air defense systems. It would have been game over a very, very long time ago. Zach is saying, do you feel bad sometimes when you hear someone try to defend Israel because you don't have to speak? Israel will debunk them the next second. I apologize if I don't entirely understand that question. I will try and kind of elaborate on it, however. Let me read it again. Do you feel bad sometimes when you hear someone try to defend Israel because you don't have to speak? Israel will debunk them the next second. Look, if you ask me personally, I don't feel bad about anyone defending Israel. To me, if you defend Israel, you've exposed yourself immediately. So that's supporting Israel, by the way. That's a very extreme position to be in. Let's establish that, regardless of how loud their mouths are. They're mouthpieces and little puppets on mainstream media and in government and these politicians. To me, they mean nothing. They're puppets. Why? Because it's their job. Many of them don't do it because they're convinced. And you've seen some of these leaks of famous people saying, pay me this, pay me that, I'm going to say that about it. People bought with money, sold their souls to the devil. You need to understand that. And there's a big difference between someone saying that in defense of Israel or promoting their cause because they're paid to do it and someone actually convinced in what they're saying. Who's convinced in what they're saying in supporting Israel? How many people? Look at the stats, and that's why they want to ban TikTok. Look at the stats when it comes to TikTok and the trending topics and support for Palestine, support for Israel. Although they pay money, they spend billions. 99% of everything to do with Israel versus Palestine is pro-Palestine. Over 99%. And the 1% or less than 1% could be funded, could well be funded. All right? So if you take out of the equation the brainwashed population in Israel, who else do you have in the world? You have people either apathetic or cowards because they fear repercussions and labeling from corrupt governments. The rest of the population, hell, even if they're not the bravest people on earth, they'll speak up and say, look, that's wrong. I feel bad about it. Why are they doing it? Without getting into too much detail, right? Because they were afraid. Oh my God, am I going to say this? Are they going to say I'm this? Or, because they say there's freedom of speech. There is no freedom of speech. If there's freedom of speech, there's freedom of speech equally, without repercussions, without intimidation, without terrorizing people to speak. And there's a difference between that and battling hate speech, for example, or racist speech or discrimination, which we are against to the core, by the way. But not many people can differentiate between valid, legit criticism and what governments deem as supposedly hate speech or what have you. But all of that is collapsing nowadays. But if you look at mainstream media, you will see many of these talk shows, if you have people supporting Palestine, do you condemn Hamas? And they don't ask anything about Israeli supporters supporting genocide. Do you condemn Hamas? Again, buying on the false narrative that Hamas massacred Israeli civilians. When Israel massacred the Israeli civilians in the Nova Festival, with the images that we saw from the helicopters that they showed us, and the tanks that the Israelis showed in the kibbutzes shooting on their houses, and the witnesses that said all of this and confirmed it, and the pilots who were in the jets on the 7th of October in the Nova Festival saying we were not taking orders. There was no command. We were chatting on WhatsApp. If you saw that report, that investigation in Al Jazeera that was published 3 weeks ago, I spoke about it as well in one of my videos over a month ago now. So, and that's the thing. Zionist-controlled media is something very real here. Kate, Hamas took in Cairo to discuss ceasefire. Will Hamas demand the release of 8,000 kidnapped Palestinians, including the West Bank? Yes, they most likely will. As a matter of fact, in the beginning of Operation Al-Aqsa flood, they stated that one of their aims is to empty Israeli prisons from all Palestinian prisoners. And when I say Palestinian prisoners, because the terminology is important here, but they are prisoners. They were kidnapped, many of them. Many of them are children, underage, kidnapped, and detained under what Israel calls administrative detention. What's administrative detention? Israel can come and kidnap you anytime for up to 6 months without telling your family, without you seeing your family, without notifying anyone, and without having legal aid. Torture, everything. Killing you in prison. So they will most likely demand that, but to them, the priority, to Hamas, is ending the war, all of the Israeli forces withdrawing from Gaza, getting all aid to Gaza, getting the people and the aid and everything to North Gaza, and rebuilding Gaza alongside other conditions, particularly building temporary houses for those who had their homes obviously demolished, up until they rebuild all of Gaza. Israel obviously doesn't want to commit to any of that, none of their demands. And Israel said a couple of times that they find it absurd that Hamas is so keen on getting the people back to North Gaza. It's because Hamas know you. It's because the Palestinian people know you. Forget about Hamas. Because they know that you want to expel them from North Gaza to completely get rid of them, complete the genocide, then get rid of them from the southern part of Gaza, and rebuild settlements in Gaza. They have plans now, development plans. They probably sold a couple of deals to some of these settlers. Fight back. What happened in Al-Aqsa? I saw a video with beating prayers, and there was a lot of tear gas. Typical Israel, end of Ramadan. They haven't had significant violent actions in Al-Aqsa. They need to have something to feed their, violence and bloodlust. Why? Because it's a place of worship. People go, people pray. Well, let's attack them. If you visit Al-Aqsa one day, I have visited Al-Aqsa many times, and you go inside the compound, you will find designated boxes where the Palestinians put all of the weapons used on them by Israel. Bombs, tear gas, bullets, just to show people who go and pray in the third holiest site in Islam what Israel does in that place. And when these things happen, there is no international condemnation or anything of the sort, right? So typical Israel, really. Without provocation, they don't need provocation, by the way. They will sell it as people were causing disruptions and this and that. But the only thing that people want to do is go and pray. And many of them, by the way, find these secret routes just to go and pray. When you speak to people from there, from the West Bank particularly, they'll tell you I had to go through this checkpoint, that checkpoint. I went in from this way, that way to come, just to go and pray. FP, where is the conscience of those supporting Israel? They have no conscience. They have no humanity. They have no morality. How can you have any sort of humanity and morality in supporting a genocide against anyone, any human being on this earth? Omar Zaqqut, if you were to make an educated guess, what would you think is more likely to happen first? More countries pulling out military support for Israel, or a neighboring country supporting Gaza militarily? That's a very interesting question. Obviously, Gaza's military support is secretive, and that's how it's successful. And they obviously produce most of their weapons that they've been defeating Israel with. For example, I'm not going to go into all of their production, but let's highlight a few. They obviously produce all of their missiles. They produce all of the side bombs. Some of them are very sophisticated, pop up and explode in different directions and what have you. But let's just take for now the Yasin 105 RPG warhead. They manufactured it. Named after Ahmad Yasin, their spiritual leader who Israel assassinated. By the way, they assassinated him when he was on his wheelchair with his two sons going out from Fajr prayer. Direct Apache missiles, 4 missiles on him and his sons, a disabled man. And it's as if they stopped the resistance, right? It only increased in strength and power and will, because they also assassinated the following leader, Abdulaziz al-Rantisi, 2 months later. Anyway, Yasin 105 is named after him. They knew exactly what they were naming this RPG warhead on. Double warhead, penetrates, explodes to make a bigger impact. They targeted more than 1,200 Israeli machinery with it, 1,000 of which Merkava tanks. Israel is out of stock when it comes to the new Merkavas. They destroyed all of them. They destroyed all of the new trooper carriers, Hanamir or the Tiger, that was supposed to be so immune and very, very well defended and protected, layers. And now Israel resorted to using the older Merkavas, number one. Number two, the M113 trooper carrier. The M113 trooper carrier was developed in the early 60s. It's so vulnerable. If you throw whatever at it, you'll destroy it. Everyone's dying in them. We've had videos of Israeli soldiers recording themselves after an impact. Half of them dead, and the rest disabled for life or mentally done or whatever. So that's important to note. However, two things are happening simultaneously. Number one, Israel is losing all of its legitimacy globally, including by its strongest, long-standing allies and people and powers who set it up. They're losing this legitimacy. Now, for example, with this climate now, without things getting worse, because you need to remember one thing here. Despite all of their support for Israel, all of their legitimization of their actions, historical and contemporary, they reached a level where they discuss banning arms exports to Israel. Do you know what that means? You're illegit. You're not legit. Okay. You're not legit, and it's happening now. And there's a war tomorrow between Iran and Israel. Who's going to support Israel? They've just been proving for the past 6 months that they're a genocidal, satanic death cult. That they're a killing death machine against their own people, against the Palestinians, against everything. Aid, everything. So do you see the legitimacy of the resistance against Israel? Now, everyone who has been aware of the situation since a long time ago, they know it's legit. We don't need someone to validate our opinion because of something that we know. You know, when you know something, you don't need validation from someone who's ignorant about the matter because you know what's happening. Now that it's revealed, Israel revealed itself to the world. Hey, everyone who hasn't been aware of the situation does, oh no, hey, What they were saying is right. Oh no. And I'm not talking about the mild people, right? I'm not talking about people who tell you all sorts of stuff, by the way. So the things are happening simultaneously. And if you, from an argument's perspective, are delegitimizing, selling arms to Israel, then why are you not legitimizing supporting the Palestinians? They're the ones facing this oppression. You support Ukraine. You support other countries that have that are supposedly facing occupation and injustice. Why do you not support the Palestinian resistance? Where's the talk about that? So alongside the talk of banning the arms to Israel, there should be talk about arming the Palestinians. Simple. They're facing genocide. They're protecting themselves genuinely against an occupier who's been committing genocide and ethnic cleansing and mass expulsion for the past 75 years. Why is there no talk about that or a debate about that? Right? So I think the two things are happening simultaneously. What level will they reach? To what extent? Right? How many countries? Who? It's revealing itself bit by bit. And Israel's obviously making its existence untenable to its closest allies, really. It's doing everything that the US doesn't really want it to do. From a US perspective, I'll repeat, it's a strategy to have low-heat conflicts in the Middle East. Why? Because they want to keep the people divided and at war with each other to make it more easy for them to control them. But when things are getting out of control, it's no longer in their interest. Now, many people have an argument to what I'm saying, which is it is actually of no interest to the US to support Israel, and it's a made-up interest because of the Zionist infiltration of the people in power in the US and in other countries, which is a valid point. However, that doesn't take away from the fact that they are supporting them. That's what they're saying. Yet even with that, this country is making itself untenable. Mel, Gone, happy to see you wearing your green kufiya again. Yeah, here we go. The green kufiya. It's a rare object now. I need to try and source some and start selling you guys some. Maybe one day. I don't have time now, though. But if I have the time, I'll probably have a revolution clothing line, right? With kufiyas and shirts and hoodies with the nice statements. I'll ask for your opinion as well in terms of colors and stuff, if we reach that stage. Anya Lyons, why food in Gaza is 20 times more expensive, and is it true? Yes, that's unfortunately true because of the typical things that happen during war. You have certain people and sides, because Israel is obviously fighting the civil side as much as possible. If they get hold of certain foods, they will sell them for a very high price. Why? Because there's very low stock. If something's more rare, it becomes more expensive. Obnoxious, awful. Hamas's civil side battles this. The police officer that Israel assassinated 2 weeks ago, this man was in charge of battling this war trade, capitalizing on people's misery during war, which happens. And he managed to get aid for the people, about 14 trucks. He managed to get his way around them to the northern part of Gaza 2 weeks ago. Israel went and assassinated him because they want the chaos. Why? They want to make Gaza uninhabitable. So that's true, because these things happen during war, and obviously Israel wants it to happen. The Palestinians are resisting these attempts as much as possible, but they still do exist because there's so much less things available in terms of food. And if someone wants something that's considered a luxury, like meat or fruit or whatever it is, they have to pay very high prices for it. Eileen Strange. I have a theory that the Israelis don't start their big Rafah offensive because Netanyahu says it will clear out the last of Hamas, but he is afraid that the resistance will prove him wrong. Interesting theory, which could be very valid. What I would add to that is that there are other elements that are delaying this supposedly imminent attack, which are the number one, the Palestinian resistance all across of Gaza. That's number one. I always say it's the Palestinian resistance, by the way, perseverance and success against Israel, that's causing this mess. If Israel finished the job a long time ago, they would have gotten their way, faced everyone, told them, look, we were successful. The Palestinian resistance is proving them wrong by their heroic resistance against Israel, against their oppression and occupation, and the fact that they're militarily humiliating them. Also, the threats from Egypt and countermeasures from Egypt. Also, the pressure from the United States, because the US knows if they go there and something happens that will explode things with Egypt, it would be a catastrophic situation for the US. But that's also an important observation. Okay, let's see if you have any more questions. I guess we've reached the last of them. Obviously, if any of you have anything else, please let me know now. But let's see the last couple of ones. I have a question about someone saying Wonder Peace WW. Any Iran invading where? I wasn't talking about Iran invading, by the way, but we were just talking about the potential retaliation about from Iran and what Israel's countermeasures are, and the US measures as well. Angela Brody, Mahmoud Salwas ladies want to buy these gorgeous embroidered Palestinian dresses, thobes, expensive and worth it. Please make it happen. Good trade for Gazan ladies. I will try. Obviously, if I have the time and capacity, I'll definitely make it happen one day. Again, if my time allows me to, because obviously the videos and this production and the fact that I do everything, right? It's not like I have a team with me. Consume a lot of my time alongside my other responsibilities as well. But if I do, then you will know. And I will take your advice as well. And thank you so much for your super thanks. FP a very interesting question. Do Israelis not realize that by limiting aid from getting to Gaza, that will directly affect the Israeli hostages as well? This is such an important observation that not many people are talking about, by the way. Now, some in the Israeli society do, especially the ones who have family members or people they know who are kidnapped in Gaza, and they criticize the government heavily for it, and they blame the government for their deaths, and they say you have blood on your hands, and they're outraged, and the protests are increasing. However, it's as if official Israel and the mainstream media and everyone supporting them, it's as if they don't address this fact whatsoever. Although the Palestinian resistance said on many occasions that the Israeli prisoners in Gaza are suffering from the same things that the Gazan population is suffering from. So let's say the resistance kidnapped Israelis and they prepared some supply. Okay, it can take weeks, days, weeks, months. It will reach a stage where it's not enough. Also, these people are not more precious than the Gazan population, right? To say the least. Yet they're not saying that. Also, the notion, by the way, let me just add to that, which deviates a little bit, but it's also linked, about the Israeli prisoners in Gaza. Israel, officially, Benjamin Netanyahu, what does he say? Our main aim is to get we're operating, not the main aim. There's the objectives of the war, it's a separate subject, demolishing the Hamas, what have you. But one of the core things is getting the Israeli prisoners back. Okay. You could have got the Israeli prisoners back from day one. Why? Because the Palestinian resistance told him from day one, we're willing to immediately engage in a prisoner swap negotiation to make a deal. From now, after they launched the attack. Why don't you do it from the beginning? If you're worried about the Israel, that's assuming that he's worried about Israelis. He's not worried about Israelis. I think the Israeli government cares about its own people. They killed over 80. The first woman that was released from Gaza on a humanitarian basis, Yocheved Lifshitz, Hamas told Israel, we want to release 2 people, including this woman, because their health is not so great and we don't want anything in return. Israel refused. What did Hamas do? They spoke to Egypt. They told them, can you take this lady? And they gave her to Egypt. Egypt then flew her to Israel. Israel wasn't expecting the bomb that she's going to land with her press conference. She had a press conference. What? All of a sudden she's speaking good things about Hamas. They treated me well. They gave me money. They gave me food. Right? The journey, it was traumatic being kidnapped and going there. But when we were there, they protected us. They gave us thingy, medicine, food. They said, we're here to protect you. We will get you back. But we want our prisoners, this and that. Anyway, what did she also add? Israeli forces were targeting us all along. From the moment we left Israel, on our journey, Israeli helicopters and forces were shooting at us. When we reached Gaza, explosions in multiple places next to us, to a level where one of the resistance fighters was injured. Okay, she survived. Many died. Over 80 were killed. Israel deliberately executed Israeli soldiers who were prisoners in Gaza to kill Al-Ghandour, who was a leader in Al-Aqsa brigades, with a gas bomb in a tunnel. They destroyed a whole civilian building, killing hundreds of people, and they threw a gas bomb in a tunnel where they knew he was located with Israeli soldiers, knowing that the Israeli soldiers were there, following an investigation that this man's mother revealed and spoke about and published posts on Facebook. even during his funeral. She wrote on a stone on his grave, "You were let down by our forces. They have blood on their hands." As a matter of fact, Gadi Eisenkot, a member of the war cabinet, he said, if we know that we have some of our citizens who are alive in Gaza, in the vicinity of someone who we want to target, then we will have to make heartbreaking decisions. What's that heartbreaking decision? Killing them. Hannibal directive. They know that. They don't care about their people. Marvin Vergus, you know anything about the recent attempt on Ben Gvir? Any other recent attempts? Yes. 11 people were arrested, 4 from the West Bank, and one of the people who organized it, alongside 6 Palestinian people from Israel, so Palestinian Israelis or Palestinians who were born in Israel, particularly from a place called Rahat in Al-Naqab or the Negev desert, planning to carry out attacks on multiple locations against multiple Israeli forces. One of these plans was a targeted assassination of Itamar Ben Gvir through an RPG missile. This was what Israel officially reported. Some people criticize it, saying, it's just marketing, is this and that. But, Ben Gvir has given many reasons for people to target him. By his statements, he's a genocidal maniac. He calls for genocide and mass expulsion of Palestinians. He's a settler in the West Bank, near Hebron. He enjoys torturing Palestinians. He's in charge of the prisons in Israel, and he appoints people who will make it difficult, and he orders them to make life more difficult for Palestinian prisoners. Ever since he held that position, more Palestinian prisoners have been tortured to death, including by beating them, internal bleeding, not giving them medical assistance, starvation, all sorts of torture methods. So, and he had previous death threats and supposed assassination attempts. It wasn't successful, but according to Israel, they imprisoned all of the group who was planning it, and he's obviously selling it as if he's, because he's so good, people are targeting him. Al-Qaeda, another hostage who made some videos for Hamas was repatriated dead this morning. Yes, I spoke about him. Apparently, Israeli forces found him buried in Khan Yunis, and they claimed that the Palestinian resistance executed him. I'm not sure if I believe that, but that's their story. The Badger, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Ya Mahmoud, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Do they not realize that the ultimate victory can come only through Allah Azza wa Jal? Do they not know that victory will have Palestinian flag colors? These people, they don't, they talk about religion and God's promise, and they don't really believe in the things that they claim to believe in. Like, let's say, for example, Israel. They're speaking on behalf of Judaism, and they're selling the notion that they're the Jewish state, protecting the Jewish people, capitalizing on Jewish trauma, and persecution throughout the years and saying that we are a safe haven for them. That's all a front, even from their perspective. So regardless of, for example, an Islamic perspective, obviously, not to kind of undermine or completely take out of the picture the preparation and the actions and the planning and everything, from their perspective and what they claim to believe in, right? God's promise, God's this, God's that. Many of them don't even believe in God. The Herzl's history, founder of Zionism, is in question in his belief. Ben Gurion, the first and one of the longest serving Israeli prime ministers, now he was surpassed by Netanyahu, if I'm not mistaken, was an atheist. And Benjamin Netanyahu as well. So they're selling a facade, really, and I'm not sure what they believe in, really. I mean, what would you believe in if you commit such crimes against humanity, against any innocent person? What would you believe in? Marvin Vergas, interesting question. I haven't seen any Hamas spokesperson in Western media. What other media outlets allow Hamas, Hezbollah to speak on Gaza and occupation? Well, Channel 4, they had an interview with a Hamas official who was relatively well spoken in English, and he was based in Iran, and he had quite a good argument. So that's one Western media outlet that had an interview with Hamas. Hezbollah, not from the major networks. I was contemplating contacting one of them, anyone who speaks English and would be willing to have conversation, because that's missing from Western media, because they want to ban, obviously, anyone from the opposite side. Like they banned RT, right? Did we forget that? Banning a network, news network from Russia. Why? Because they have a different opinion. Well, where's freedom of speech? And if to you that was giving a platform to an occupying country, then why are you defending an occupying country, a genocidal occupying country that, bearing in mind the scale, the level, the time frame, the casualties, the innocent casualties, the children, the women, have done far worse? Israel. So all of these things are important to highlight, and it just shows that they don't really want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear anyone speaking about the resistance. They don't want people to show the other side. They don't want people speaking the truth, really. Otherwise, give them a platform. Listen to what they have to say. And don't just bring people supporting the cause. Like if you see many mainstream media and some people who claim to be like, open for Palestinian crowd or what have you, they never spoke with anyone from Hamas. Like I said, the only channel that I saw speaking with Hamas particularly is Channel 4, who take somewhat of a bit of a different stance to other mainstream media, but they're still biased. They still sell the typical Israeli lies, when it comes to Israel as a state, their right to defend themselves, the 7th of October, and all of the false pseudo-narrative that was sold around the 7th of October. It just highlights really how biased they are and how uninterested they are in finding out the truth. Dan is saying, Mahmoud, what do you know about +972 Lavender report? I think it's just so legally Israel can argue against the intent for genocide charge in at the ICJ. I haven't heard or read about that report, to be frank. But what I would say about Israel and all of their defense, really, in the ICJ, gets an intent, right? You're beyond intent. So for argument's sake, that's arguing the intent, the intentions of genocide. We're beyond that stage. Why? Because it has been already proven that they committed a genocide by an international court, by the International Court for Justice, asking Israel to stop committing acts of genocide. They're telling you you're committing genocide. It's like telling someone, stop stealing. Well, what does that mean? That you're stealing. So they've already established that from a legal perspective. And by the way, there are many who are in the legal profession speaking up. Not that many of them have lots of followers, but on social media, on social media networks, you will see many of them speaking up about it from a legal perspective. You have these 600 legal experts speaking with the British government. By the way, this woman who they spoke with, I forgot her name. She said we might have no other option but to stop arming Israel, and that's not a political stance. Look, even now she's trying to defend her political position. Imagine what level these people are. But anyway, they told her the UK needs to stop arming Israel because they are committing crimes against humanity. And if we continue to arm them, then we're complicit in crimes against humanity. Now, one of the things I said about the ICJ, although I was never expecting the ICJ ruling to stop Israel from committing the massacre because of the lack of enforcement, and when it comes to law and order, you need enforcement. It's like someone stealing, you tell them, okay, you're a thief, by law, I order you to stop stealing. Otherwise, what? Are you going to come and arrest me? Am I going to be punished? If not, then who cares? That's the problem. However, what I did say about the ICJ is the side effects, right? What's happening with other countries that are seeing the ruling. And if some of these countries do have some sort of respect for international law, then how can they continue to support Israel? Then you started to see the trend of people, countries, saying, no, we can't deal with you, because they have some sort of respect for international law. And they fear some repercussions. Whereas Israel was the spoilt, well, I don't want to say the word now, but I feel like saying a word, but I'm going to stick to my morals, right? But I feel like saying something else. But they are the produce of a country that they get complete impunity from. They're enabled. So to them, I can get away with it. Why the hell should I stop? I've been getting away with it for 75 years. Well, should I stop now? And I told you yesterday and the day before about this guy on Channel 14. He was in the Israeli military-industrial complex. They were talking about Israel having to produce its own weapons. And what he said in that interview, and then it was passed on by as very normal, just shows you the level of racism that exists in this country. He said, oh, this war proved that we need to manufacture all of our weapons and not buy weapons from the goyim. The goyim, very derogatory term that they use for the others who are below us, even the US. That's the situation that you're dealing with, really. Omar Zaqut, mashallah, brother Mahmoud, you are so much more level-headed than I am. I think that's what makes you very unique. Thank you for having a strong sense of morals and manners. Now, thank you, brother, and thank all of you, really. No, it's when you speak to many people, and many people listening to you, I think you should practice self-restraint and try and be a good example, to say the least, right? And Angela saying something similar. Mahmoud, you are so restrained. I get Tourette's whenever I think of his. Yeah, I know. But like, it's important. Like what I told myself since the beginning, really, since I said I'm gonna be posting videos every day. I said I'm not gonna be dragged into, number one, the hate cycle. I'm not gonna be dragged into the racism cycle. And I'm not going to be dragged into the use of bad language. Now, mind you, you can have sometimes a word going out, right? Some might find it offensive, but the right people might find it offensive. That's not a big problem. But swearing and stuff, and what are they going to lead to, really? And I think someone got the word that I wanted to say anyway. But listen, thank you so much for tuning in. I really enjoy my time with you and your very informative inputs and very relevant questions. Again, obviously, just to remind you and anyone who is not regular to my live streams, I really do them for my obviously members, subscribers, viewers, because I no longer have the time to. I had the time before to respond to as many individual comments as possible, because many people have substantial things that they want to know about, and I appreciate that some of you just want to have a broader wealth of knowledge in supporting your positions. And I speak and I got introduced to so many people through this journey who are really good human beings. And it just gives you hope, really, for the future. So these live streams are primarily so I can have direct discussions with you and give you some time and give you some platform as well. So thank you so much for joining in. And in case you don't know, there was a video published while we were having this live stream, so go ahead and watch it, particularly about Iraq and their strategic attacks on Israel. And apart from that, enjoy the rest of your Saturday and enjoy your weekend, day, night, afternoon, late night, evening, depending on where you are. Many of you are from across the seas and the oceans. And excuse me if I haven't, by the way, notified you earlier today. It's because I was busy about the live stream, but I'm having them more on a daily or nightly basis. And tomorrow, even if I don't post it during, I most likely will try my best to post the link at least for the live stream during the day, which you will see on my community tab. In case you don't get it directly, head out to my channel on the community tab next to the videos and lives. You will see exactly when I'm going to do the live stream, apart from the videos, obviously. If not, then it will most likely be later on, just before the live stream is going to happen. Thank you so much. Thank you for all of your beautiful comments. And I will see you soon in the next video. Take care.